Are you ready to start living brave? If you're bored by living practical, by playing small, by staying safely within your comfort zone, if you seek to grow authentically and are willing to break the rules, you are going to love this episode. I'm talking with Shoshanna Raven, yoga teacher turned 7-figure entrepreneur. Shoshanna is passionate about guiding women through the journey of radical self-expression and business growth to amplifying their impact and income and quantum leap towards their unique vision. After a yoga teacher training, traveling to 30 plus countries, and a successful career in business journalism, she launched the Living Brave podcast, which is an amazing show, by the way. I highly recommend that you listen to it. This expanded into a community of thousands, sold out international retreats and signature coaching programs. Shoshanna grew her business to 7 figures in just 1.5 years, which is incredible, right? And also a bit awe-inspiring. And I couldn't wait to ask her about her journey, how she started, and what advice she has for anybody who's just getting started. We've had a really great conversation. She shared it all, and I really hope you enjoy it. Hey there, welcome to the Blissful Biz podcast. I'm your host, Susanne Reike, here to help yoga and wellness entrepreneurs build a thriving online business. If you're ready to make a bigger impact and earn money online, you are in the right place. Each week you learn about websites, digital products, social media strategies, and what's working now to build your online business. And now let's get started. Hi, Shoshanna. Welcome to the Blissful Biz podcast.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me and staying up late your time.
I know it's not so late yet. So I'm really honored. I'm really excited about connecting. So we're going to dive more into your story in the episode, but can we just get started by you introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I am right now speaking to you from Denver, Colorado. So I live here in the mountains. My name is Shoshanna Raven. I am a business and leadership coach for heart-centered, I like to say, shame-slaying, way-paving leaders. So a lot of creative entrepreneurs and empowered, female leaders who really want to create change on a big scale, change paradigms, shift conversations. And so I really coach the whole person, right? So I have programs from leadership programs to business strategy programs to programs on relationship and love and energetics and confidence. So I really believe in actually multi-passionate. I hope that I can be a permission slip and evidence for the listeners out there who want to be multi-passionate, have lots of different offerings. I do high-level mentorship and masterminds. I have smaller programs. I have a year-long experience. I do global retreats. I have my own podcast, all under the Living Brave brand umbrella.
It's amazing what you do. I just I just researched you and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe the journey that you've been on in how you became so successful in such a short amount of time. And I love how you show up. I love how clear you are on your niche and your brand and how you communicate. How did that evolve?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the best thing about this journey for me is that a lot of the business strategy that people teach, it actually gets to be more organic and more intuitive than we make it to be. And sometimes us heart-centered, passionate, really grounded women come into the business space because, we want to share our gifts with the world. And then something called strategy trauma happens where it's then we overthink and we overplan. We do things that are kind of out of integrity because someone said this is a script and this is the way to do it. So what I'm grateful for is that I really started my business without an intention to monetize it. So I actually didn't know I was going to start a business. I started a podcast called Living Brave to really share my story and share other people's stories. I decided that the things that really make us feel shameful, right? Our secrets, our biggest fears, if only they found out, that actually those, when we embrace those things and we shared them and we became someone with nothing to hide, and we were unstoppable and limitless, and we could really access this like vulnerability that led to true connection and like, really owning who you are, right? So I spoke about my HSV journey, which is, genital herpes, which at least here in the States is a huge stigma, although 1 in 4 people have HSV2 and 2 in 3 people have HSV1. Like, what? It is just something no one talks about. So I just felt like a deep calling within me to really talk about my journey and my story and my empowerment journey, because I felt so confined by my shame and by stigma for such a long time. When I started opening up about it, I just was like, my life was blowing me away. The connection, the joy, the freedom. People are like, you've got to start something.
I was just about to ask, what were the reactions? Yeah, when you started talking about that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I pitched my story to so many publications, and like, I just wanted it to be big. I was like, that's a big story. And some of you might feel this way. It's like, this is so big, it's got to be perfect, right? It's got to be a big bang. Like, you have a story, but you've like got to save it. So I saved it for like a year and a half. Like, I would talk about it with, I was starting to open up. And when we talk about the shame journey, it's not about going online and sharing your deepest, darkest secret, right? It's exploring it, healing it within yourself, naming it, speaking it out loud, like practicing, before you tell the world about it, or you might really traumatize yourself. But in that process, I went and I started a podcast, and the podcast was so well received. Like, it was mind blowing. Like, I had a following of, less than 2,000 people, and I still have a pretty small following comparatively. If you look at other, multi 7-figure a year businesses, I do mine all organically. We don't use any paid advertising. And so it's still, we're just below 10,000 followers. It's grown all organically. But when I launched my podcast, it was just family and friends. And it was really just the truth of my heart and soul. Like, I've got to share this, or else I'm going to pop. And I finally just decided to create my own stage, because nowhere that I pitched to, no podcast that I was going to share the story on, no one accepted it. And so I was like,
that's so weird. Yeah. I can't. Yeah.
It was like, I guess I've got to launch my own thing, and sometimes that happens. Like, I want to be on stage. I want to be on stage. I want to do this thing. And the beauty about social media and the world today is that you can create your own stage. So we get to stop waiting and just create it. So I created the podcast, and then the rest is history. I think I had just the podcast for about 6 months until I was a yoga teacher as well. So I had my first yoga retreat. I was doing freelance writing, because sometimes as yoga teachers, we know if we're in the traditional yoga industry getting paid $10 an hour and zero if no one shows up, that you've got to pick up some side hustles. So I had about 7 side hustles. Like, I was walking dogs. I was working at a brewery. I was writing for like 4 different sites. All kinds of side projects, And so, the writing jobs started dropping away, and I just finally had to face like, oh my gosh, I've had a dream of being a coach for so long, like but the word coach, I was like, who am I to do this? And I finally just invested in coaching. I think I invested $7,000 before I even made $1 in the business. I had a $0 launch in January 2020. And in December 2021, we had a near $400,000 month.
Wow, that's a crazy journey, and it's really inspiring. Really proud of you. That's amazing. Yeah. So you really were living up to your Living Brave brand name.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because I'm sure for you, it's like the name Blissful Business. It's like you're held to a certain level of, like, you're accountable to your brand, right? Like, my brand holds me. So it's like, I've got to be brave because I'm the living, breathing embodiment representation of living brave. My business grows as a way of my bravery. So we got to be embodied in what we're sharing, right?
Yeah, true. And for me, it's like I can't get burned out or hustle like crazy. I want still to live my life and travel in my camper van and spend time with my dog and not only work. That's why it's called a blissfulness. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, and I'm sure you have days, like there are days where I'm so afraid and I'm stuck in limbo, but it's like that driving force, that value, like of bravery is always what moves me forward. And so for you, it's like, okay, I can't, like, if your mission is to create bliss, you can't go about creating that mission by working against the very mission that you're standing for. And I think so many people do that. It's like, okay, I want women to like have it all and, feel really good in their body and do really well in their business and not sacrifice anything. And then on the path to building that for themselves, they're sacrificing. And it's like, this doesn't make sense. It's not going to work that way.
Yeah, seriously, the biggest issue with everything in our life is fear. In business, in relationships, it's just the fear that we lose something that, and everything is impermanent anyway. So I think having that vision of wanting to build a business living brave, it sounds really empowering. And like it sounds like you've been able to really not give in to all those limiting beliefs and fears, or maybe not as many as other entrepreneurs or yoga teachers. Would you agree with that? Or is it like just like the journey and you learned like so fast?
Yeah, I think that
so quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a huge point of permission, which is like the fear doesn't go away ever. It's like, I always say that bravery is walking with fear. So it's like like you do it with your fear, right? You eat fear for breakfast. You're just like, instead of avoiding your fear, you use it as fuel. Because when you avoid something, like anything that's in the darkness and secrecy, that's an unconscious desire or a fear, will ultimately dictate the course of your life, whether you like it or not, because we manifest from our unconscious. So it's like, when you have shame around something, it starts to manifest things in your life. You have a desire that you don't really want to embrace, it's going to manifest all sorts of things in your life. So it's like bringing it out of the darkness actually allows you to have power over it. So instead of avoiding fear and living life and the avoidance of fear and the avoidance of pain and the avoidance of disappointment, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you disappoint yourself and you create disappointment on the path to avoid disappointing others. It's like, oh, but what if I go all in and then it doesn't work? So I might as well just put one foot in so it doesn't work anyway. And it's like, what? Most of us are living our lives in the pursuit of avoiding pain and avoiding fear rather than using it and instead asking, how can I set myself up to win? Like, how can I set myself up to succeed is very different than how can I set myself up to avoid fear? How can I set myself up to win? Like, who are you surrounding yourself with? What action do you get to take today? Like, what's the next step? What's the next conversation? Use fear. It's scary and it feels good. Well, that's probably bravery. I was having a conversation with a client recently who was going to do something scary. She was going through a conscious uncoupling, and they were going to have a conversation. And she said, I'm just so scared. And I said, well, you don't have to do this. And she said, no, I want to do it. Like, it feels so right. And I said, oh, okay, so it feels right and you're scared. That's a green light. Like, that's a green light. Like, don't make the fear mean anything wrong. It's just the unknown. And so we have a couple options in the unknown. We walk with the fear and we leverage faith, which is also a muscle that's built over time, or we just let fear win. And then we become the self-fulfilling prophecy of everything that we're afraid of. So I think it's really understanding how to walk with your fear. And then when you do something again and again and again, and you get more evidence and you gain your skill set and you gain your confidence, this is how confidence is built. Confidence is simply compounded bravery. It's like, okay, if it's brave to walk up to a stranger and ask for a selfie. I'm sure the first time you're going to be like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is so weird. And then you do it again and you're like, well, the last person was like, sure, wasn't even phased. The third person was like, what? And then you felt a little shame, but you didn't die. And then the 20th person, you're like, hey, you want a selfie? Like, anything over time you can gain confidence in with evidence, and your skills improve, and you're no longer afraid. So sometimes things that used to feel brave, now you're just confident in them, but you're just confident because confidence is compounded bravery again and again and again, so that it's not scary anymore. So that's how you build confidence, is just doing brave things again and again and again. And then you reach a new level. That's the funny thing. It's like confidence. You can be confident in something and you land there, but bravery is that forward momentum. It's like there is no limit to how confident you can be. You just keep getting more and more confident. There's no limit because you keep saying, okay, what's my next level? What's my next brave thing? And then you do it again and again and again. That becomes confidence. And then the next thing that makes you feel brave. So I think sometimes it's like, oh no, when you find out that you're going to have more than one rock bottom in life, and you also find out that you don't just take one scary leap, it's like a lifestyle choice. You're like, oh my God, wait, I'm going to have to keep being brave.
Yeah. But I love that you also said, because we all start at nowhere, basically, with 0 followers and not the same level of confidence showing up, going live. Oops, Luna. And so, yeah, it's just really staying consistent as well. And just like maybe imagining what's the worst thing that could happen. It's probably not as bad. And then simply doing it. So we have a lot of our listeners are yoga teachers, and some of them might say, okay, I have enough of like running from studio to studio, earning peanuts, and want to start on a different journey, building an online business, becoming a coach. What advice would you give to them?
Oh my gosh. Well, the thing where you said consistency, like it's easier to be consistent when you're not trying to be somebody else. You're not trying to, it's hard to be consistent when you don't love what you do. Like if someone's like, oh yeah, a good niche to go into is this. And, the way to show up is this, but it's not you and it's not what you're passionate about. It's going to be really hard to show up again and again and again, especially during the hard times. In the beginning, it's hard because you're like, oh my gosh, is anyone hearing me? Is anyone listening? Oh, there's one person live. Great. Okay. Oh, no one signed up and I wanted 5 or whatever it is. Then you get to the higher level and it's like, there are thousands of people, who see my stuff every day, hundreds of thousands. And 10 of them think I'm the worst person in the world. 1,000 of them love everything that I put out. A ton of them don't care. It's like, can you hold that? Can you hold mean comments? Can you hold all kinds of stuff, And so it's like, you've got to be up for a challenge. You've got to be up to feel alive. I think people who go into entrepreneurship because it's easy, it's like, it's easy to get the 9 to 5. So if you're just like, okay, I just want more predictable income, and then it's like a 9 to 5. But if you're like, I am here because I want to see how big we can go. I want to be my own boss. I want to be creative. I'm up for the challenge. I'm going to grow who I am as a person, my leadership, and build something incredible. I'm going to be one of the crazy ones who takes crazy action to get crazy results. Like, my one piece of advice is like, get yourself in the room with people who are steps ahead of you, and stop talking about your big dreams and getting advice from people who you wouldn't trade places with.
Oh, I love that, because I think that's so true. And yeah, one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have you on this podcast, because I feel it's just like, it looks like impossible to people. How can a yoga teacher so young in just a few years build a 7-figure business? And it's possible. It's committing yourself to it.
Yeah, it becomes like devotion, right? But I haven't done this by sacrificing anything. Like, I have gone through hard times, but it's like, I really feel more in my purpose than ever, and more in my heart, more in myself. I'm in love. I have a lot of time to do stuff like this, for my health, for my friends. Like, I have full freedom to travel. You know, it's like, I just got back from a trip in Orlando. I went to a business conference. We went to Disney World. We went to Universal Studios. We were in Chile snowboarding. We were in Bali. Like, this is all this year, Mexico. Like, it is like, there is so much freedom and there is so much expansion. And it really is step by step. Like, at no point along the way did I feel like I should be somewhere else. Like, at every point I was like, oh my gosh, I'm mind blown. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I'm someone who's like, oh my God, like 6 figures in 4 months. Like, oh my gosh, we did like, 3 million in less than 2.5 years. Like, what's happening? But that's not to like say like people feel that and then they're like, oh, I'm going too slow. But that's not the point. It's like just to be evidence that it's possible. But like, if you're making your first $10, your first $10,000, like, that's insane. And I think just like deep gratitude and appreciation, really, like, you can't fake passion. Like, you can't fake feeling. Like, my first podcast episode, I was shaking. I was so like, it's like, this is my life's work. I'm so committed to my growth. I used to make $19,000 a year. Like, I get it. I get how triggering, I get how out there it feels, but it's really like, I was just there. I've been there every step of the way, and I know how astronomical it sounds, but I've invested like $300,000 in this time in my own coaching and mentoring and training.
That's a lot. That's definitely a lot. How did you get there? Did you have like any money issues that you had to overcome to really expand like that?
Yes, for sure. I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say on that. That could be 5 hours. But I definitely have had to overcome a lot of financial things. It was really hard for me to let go of money in the beginning and really understand the power of investing in ourselves. I think this is why women tend to make less money than men and struggle as entrepreneurs, is because, entrepreneurship is really about taking larger financial risks than the average person. Like, my partner says it and he's so comfortable. He's like, oh yeah, entrepreneurship is just about spending money and then making more of it back. I'm like, oh God, that's so hard for us women. Not only do we not trust ourselves with money, but we haven't been taught, like, what does investing really mean? It's not like, okay, I'm investing $3,000 in this program, and if I don't make it back in 2 months, then it's not worth it. It's like, okay, can I really see myself and my dreams as an asset worth investing in over time? Like, am I just concerned with financial ROI in 2 days? Or like, how long is my time horizon? And it's really hard for people to stretch their time horizon. Like, most businesses will be in the red for years. Most people are trying to be entrepreneurs like employees, and like, the truth is, like, that's not how it works. Like, it's so awesome that the coaching industry has such a low barrier to entry, but like, really being willing to, like, you can either, maybe it'll take you 5-10 years to really build, and you learn from no one. I've never known someone super successful who hasn't worked with people, like anyone, or you can fast track it. So it's so true. I fast tracked it every step of the way. Like, and I love being able to be that for my clients. I can't imagine being a coach without being coached. Like, you don't always need to have one, but it's like, I learned so much about how I wanted to coach and mentor, and I gained tools in my toolbox, and through being in countless, like, not only have I invested, but I've actually showed up. Like, I don't really watch TV, I love personal development. I read books. My whole life is like, I live my life like it's a movie and a story. Like, I'm really, really invested in growing and evolving, and it's a lot easier sometimes in this life to numb when we haven't done the first work, which is why I'm really passionate about helping people with like the self-worth and the confidence and the emotional, maturity and the energetics, like understanding how to really feel our feelings, how to be in our full expression, because none of the business strategy works without that stuff. You've got to do that stuff first, and you've got to do that stuff the entire way.
It's I definitely, and I'm a little bit older, so I started my business, I think I was already over 40, and I learned so much more about myself as an entrepreneur then, like, it's like this, I always call it this beautiful road of self-discovery, self-love, self-acceptance, and just super grateful for all the challenges as well, like, that you had to overcome to show up as you show up, to be consistent. And I love how you're showing up in such a feminine, creative, fun way. So you're really shining online. So how did you evolve in that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think in that shine and that willingness to be seen is like, there's different parts of that, right? Like my business started because I spoke openly about an STI and genital herpes and this thing that once I was like, oh my gosh, if anyone found this out about me. So, I mean, coming out with a bang like that, like it's really been about authentic leadership. I think people are really tired of, okay, what does my brand need to look like? Okay, well, everyone else is there and I'm not there yet. So I've got to pretend I'm there. And then you have this whole false identity and people can see right through it. So people are really looking for the truth, like the truth, And yes, like I celebrate so big because I just wish that we would stop editing ourselves and editing each other as women. It's like, oh, she's celebrating. She shouldn't do it in this way. And we don't actually look at our triggers. It's like, why don't we just let people celebrate? Like, gosh, things are hard sometimes. Like, I would not be where I am right now if it wasn't for people who are like, I'm going to celebrate when things are great. I'm going to be the evidence. I wouldn't have the dreams that I have. And so I think part of the reason why people are afraid of shining is because they're judging other people for shining. So I think once you clean that up within yourself and you look at where am I projecting because I don't feel like I'm enough amid someone else's celebration. So of course, if I keep judging leaders and placing them on a pedestal where only they could fall off of, then I'm not going to want to lead. So you clean that up within yourself, and then also the courage to not only celebrate, but to be vulnerable and truthful, so like I went through publicly went through like the biggest heartbreak of my life in May 2021. So that was about not even a year and a half ago. And I was kind of public with my relationship. It was a 3-year relationship and it rocked my whole world. Like consciously, I think subconsciously I knew, but consciously it came out of left field. We were living together. It was like, I couldn't even walk, it was like the wind was knocked out of me. I was like, spent the whole day like in fetal position, like crying. It was like mourning the loss of my life and this vision that I had. And it was brutal. Like heartbreak is so brutal. And I had never been like, I had started my business with him. I had, not with him, but like with him by my side. And like it was just really, really devastating. And I had to see a lot of my old patterns and a lot of things that were hard. And to show up in that time, like I showed up. I didn't drown myself in business and I didn't, share what I wasn't ready to share, but, I would show my tears. I would share what I was going through. I would share what I was leading myself through. And so now when I celebrate, like I'm in love and I'm moving in with my partner next month. And, I met him about 9-10 months ago and it's like so good, my whole healing journey. And like people want to be on the journey with you. But if I was just like, oh, I'm in love and I'm moving in and we live in this awesome house and we're traveling, goodbye. But so many people have seen the crumble. Like they're like, oh my God, I was there when your life fell apart and you let us see you. And then we walk that journey with you. And like, I gained so much respect for you. And now like, I'm not afraid to celebrate because I'll tell you when things aren't. Like, I'll tell you when things are hard and how I'm leading myself through it. And it's like that transparency, it makes me want to show up every day because I feel like I have a real connection with my community.
I love that. I think it's how marketing changed in the last years. And it is so much more a two-way street. Do you remember, like, I don't know, 5 years ago when a launch was that somebody created like 3 polished videos and sent like a bunch of emails? And now it's so much more about connecting with your followers, with your audience. It's a two-way conversation that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
So, which really works well for you because you do show up authentically and share and build that connection.
Yeah.
So, did you ever have to deal with negative comments or doubt from others in regards to how you show up to your work?
But hands down, I think this is something that I wish people talked about more. It's not to like scare people. It's just, well, the truth is the things you think people are saying about you are mostly your own fears and shame. Like the voices you think are in their head, it's like, those are just your own fears. Like, oh, they'll think this, they'll think this, they'll think I'm too much. But very often you already feel that about it. It's like most people are just going to click on buy. Like they're just not going to be fazed. The truth is there are some people who are in so much pain that they're just looking for a place to project it, and they'll project it anywhere, and you might be in their path of fire, And I honestly feel like living our life trying to avoid people not liking us is the smallest way to play. So I actually hope people's greatest fears, like someone not getting you, someone being mean to you, like I hope it happens that you just find out, oh, it wasn't so bad. And then you just keep going. And then you're not afraid of it anymore, So yeah, I've definitely had a lot of, with people who don't like the message, who get it backwards, who, comment weird stuff, who, bizarre things happening. And, I worked with mentors and have friends who are also at the, multiple 8-figure business, reaching hundreds of thousands, millions of people. My client, Emily Bingham, we started working together when she was struggling to sell a $300 workout course. And now she's, on track for a multiple 6-figure a year, very shortly after. And we've been through every stage together. I started working with her when she had maybe 3,000 followers on Instagram. Now she has over 250,000 followers on TikTok, far over 10,000 on Instagram. And she's changing the conversation around grief, which you could imagine is a very charged topic, but she lost her husband at a very young age to cancer and has 2 young children. And she really talks about empowering people in their grief and helping people heal through grief. And she's got a bubbly personality. And I've been helping her celebrate more. And she's like, I know celebration and grief don't go hand in hand, but we've got to celebrate how far we've come, and all of these things. It's like, the kinds of comments that she gets, it's out of this world. It's like, it's so horrible, the kinds of things people say. And also the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people whose lives she's changing every day. So most people, it's easy to say we want the success. It's easy to say, I want the 7-figure business. I want the millions of followers. But most people don't know the reason that they don't have it is because they're not willing to hold the flip side. Which is like, yeah, well, what if you want 100 people in your program, but what about the 3 people who are going to ask for a refund and say they hated it? Even if 97% of them are like, this was the best thing that changed my life.
That's so true. Yes, we all do that, right? So we all only remember the one person who said something negative Yeah.
And so you really got to build your core. It's like, we really want the big business of you can't go through a launch without freaking out and wanting to drop the whole thing because no one signed up in the first 2 days. I think we got to build our leadership a little more before you're aiming for those big goals. So it's built over time. But yeah, there are we've got to just build a solid core, and we've got to be okay that people are allowed to have their own view. Not everyone has to like you. Actually, most people aren't going to like you. And in fact, most people are creating marketing so maybe to be for everyone, when really the best marketers, they're like, how can I get rid of people who this is clearly not for in the least amount of time possible so that I can actually get to my humans who are ready for this message?
I think it's probably something you need to embrace is to find people who don't like you.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. Because otherwise you won't be successful. You just will be vanilla and forgettable and yeah. People pleaser.
Exactly.
I'm a recovering people pleaser, so I get that.
Yeah. And that comes from such a loving place, but you've got to also this is why the self-love, the self-worth, the shame, the empowerment work comes first. Because it's like, if we try to build a business and we're still in people pleasing, it's like, where does people pleasing sometimes come from? It's like a self-sacrificial way of being, you know? It's like, I'm afraid so much of you not liking me that I'm willing to sacrifice myself and my truth. And therefore, I'm never really reaching true connection, because even if I edit myself to be who I think you want me to be and you do accept me, which is never for sure, people will accept you. People will reject you whether or not you are your fullest expression. So you might as well be the fullest expression. But say it's like, I'm trying to get you to like me, which people pleasing is a subtle form of manipulation, right? You know, I'm trying to get you to like me so much, I'm so willing to abandon myself.
Yeah.
You know, like rather than doing that work of like, you know what, people aren't going to like me. People are going to love it and then hate it. People are going to unfollow. People are going to say things. People are also going to love it and be madly in love with you and like want to do everything with you and hang on to every word. You know, so it's like, I've got to come to a place where I have a beautiful relationship with myself first, because the truth is, I don't think about abandoning. I don't care so much. Not care, but I'm not so triggered by what if they abandon me when I know I won't abandon myself.
Yes, that's beautiful. I think it's not about not caring. You're right about that, you know, because that would make us to machines and robots and, you know, like inhuman. And we all have our humanity, and you need that to show up in that authentic, open, loving way.
Yes. And I think that's where some people teach, like, you just have to stop caring. And that's not the thing, because my business grows by my heart.
But
so
it's like, it's about not being triggered. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't stop caring. I'm just, and I don't, it's not like I don't wish like people got it and, you know, could see that, like, gosh, I have the best of intentions, you know, and that, like, of course I want that, but it's an ability to see beyond like that person reaching out and firing all these criticisms at you. It's like, when you're able to be in your leadership and pause and realize that person's in pain, that has nothing to do with you, or when someone close to you rejects you and you realize it's not so much about you, or they think you've changed, it's not so much you've changed, but that they just feel different around you now. Maybe they question if they're worthy. Maybe they question if you're going to cut them out, so they cut you out before you can. You know, like, having that awareness, it doesn't mean it stop you, like, it doesn't hurt, but you're not triggered. And then it's not that you don't care, you just stop changing who you are.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was like a heavy question. But I love that we talked also about celebrating yourself and your success. And I feel that especially as women, female entrepreneurs, we don't really do that enough. It's like always that fear of showing up too much, being too much. I feel, especially when you are successful. And yeah, it just brings up all those fears and limiting beliefs in other people who are then judging us. Yeah, still celebrate yourself and your successes. And I think that's great also that you talk about your success, and it's inspiring and empowering. So please keep on doing that and share so openly. Do you have like one last tip for our listeners to stay motivated and so they can show up?
Yeah, you know, something is just like, have fun. You know, like, let it be playful and let it be fun and creative and artistic. You know, there's one way to grow a business. So people who tell you to do it in a certain way and be a certain way, it's not that they're giving advice that doesn't work. It's just there's another paradigm. Like, I teach feminine business. I teach feminine strategy. And there's a lot of people who say like, oh, it's the feminine energetics or the masculine strategy, but there's like a way in which there's actually an innovative way to do business, you know, without pain points and without urgency-based sales and without pushiness and without just relying on aspirational branding. Like, so when you get to just treat this as like art, you know, there's no way to mess up your art. Go learn from people who inspire you and like have fun, because the last thing that we want is to make ourselves emotionally poor on the path to creating businesses of our dreams, right? So it's like, let's work on wealth from the inside out. Like, there is something to be grateful for in every single moment. Like, really, like, what does true wealth mean to us? And then lengthen our horizon. So many people are playing this finite game, or they think they're playing a finite game and they think they're failing, but there is no failing when you realize you're playing the infinite game of legacy. Like, there's no rush. You're okay. Like, and when you do that is when things start to quantum leap and collapse time and all of that. So I would love to connect with anyone who's listening. I'm sure you'll link and everything in the show notes, but I typically hang out on Instagram, Shoshanna_Raven. And then I have my podcast, Living Brave If You Love Podcast, and my Living Brave community on Facebook. We're always running, events, and I always have kind of programs and offers and things like that. So we're a really people-centric company. So often we've struggled to even have all of our offers on our website. So just reaching out to us, letting know what resonates with you, like that you listen to this episode, if you're ever curious about deeper level support and things like that. But yeah, it was so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And yeah, we add those links to the show notes, of course. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Really loved our conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blissful Biz podcast. If you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes. This would mean the world to me. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to never miss a new episode. To learn more about how to work with me one-on-one, my courses and membership, or to get instant access to freebies, workshops, and more, go to susannahreiker.com right now. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.